It's 1 o'clock here in Geneva. Good morning, good day, good afternoon. It's very nice to have all of you here with us today for the briefing of the COP-4 documents that are going to be tabled for the meeting convening online from the 1st to the 5th of November. My name is Claudia ten Hafe, and I will be joined today by my colleagues Marianne Bailey, Sandra Rucker and Lara Ognibene to take you through the documents that will be before the COP at that online segment. I will also be giving you a bit of information of the overall documents that have been prepared for the COP4 meeting, be it first or second segment. And let me begin, and just to say, this is the second time we are making this presentation. We made the exact same presentation yesterday, the day before, but this briefing is given in 2 time zones to try to be of service to as many parties as possible. With that, let me come to the first slide. Thank you very much. Just to give you an overview of how we have structured this session, I will be outlining the agenda for COP4 and walk you through the annotated agenda, a document called Issues and Information for the COP, as well as draw your attention to the list of documents. Thereafter, we will focus specifically on the documents that are opened at COP-4.1, as we've come to know or come to call the online segment, namely the documents related to agenda item 6, that is program of work and budget, and then the documents related to parts of the agenda item 4 that will be opened, namely those related to the 8th replenishment of the JEF, those related to draft guidance, and those related to effectiveness evaluation. And then we'll conclude with the document on the date of the resumed meeting. So let me go to the next slide. Firstly, just to orient you on our brand new website, there's a dedicated page for the COP4, all the information related to COP4. We hope you found it already. If not, these are the directions. Please press on decision making in COP4 and you will have this information come forward for you. And if you'd like to follow along while we are speaking to you through the documents, please just press documents and you will find the documents there. Next page, please. COP4 has been decided to convene in 2 parts. We've come to call it COP4.1 and COP4.2. COP4.1 will open on the 1st of November and go all the way until the 5th of November. It will convene online. Thereafter, the 4th meeting will adjourn and will resume again at a date that is to be decided by the Conference of the Parties at COP4.1, and this date is tentatively scheduled for the first quarter of 2022. This division into 2 segments comes from the agreement of the Bureau in light of the extraordinary circumstances that our world has had to deal with over the last almost 2 years or 18 months, given the COVID pandemic. Let me also draw your attention on the left-hand side to the documents that speak to how these 2 segments are organized. That is the Provisional Agenda, the Annotated Agenda, the document called Issues and Information for the Attention of the COP at its 4th meeting, and the overall list of documents. Next slide. Let me take you first to the Provisional Agenda. The Provisional Agenda, which is the first document 4/1, is the agenda for the entire meeting, from the beginning all the way to the end. It is a familiar agenda to many of you because it is traditionally structured. It starts with an opening, organizational matters. There's still one aspect to complete on the rules of procedure, so that would be item 3. The bulk of the considerations are under item 4, of course, where there are many, many different aspects. In fact, you will see in the document we have structured it in terms of aspects A to L, or matters A to L. Then there is the agenda item on international cooperation and collaboration. Thereafter, the program of work agenda item, and then agenda item 7, which traditionally is the agenda item to set the date and venue for the next meeting. Given these extraordinary circumstances, here is now called dates of the resumed 4th meeting, and then also consideration of the dates and venue of the 5th meeting. And then the the agenda concludes as usual with other matters, adoption of the report of the meeting, and of course closure of the meeting. Next slide. Having given you the overview of the overall COP agenda that applies all the way from the beginning on the 1st of November until the end, whenever the last day of the COP will be, I'd like to take you into how the agenda items are structured for opening and discussion in segment 1 versus segment 2. And this is all outlined in some detail in the annotated agenda and also in the document called Issues and Information. We'd like to recommend that you read the annotated agenda and issues information next to each other. The one is set out in table form for you to see not only the agenda and the topic under that agenda that will be discussed, but also gives you all of the documents that are relevant to that discussion, as well as in places links to decisions and or other information that would be useful. Whereas the issues and information sets out the same information in narrative form. And so these are mirror images of each other. Having said that, the issues and information also gives you a bit of other information that is not necessarily part of any agenda item, but is nonetheless important to bring to the attention of the COP. Specifically, I would like to draw your attention also to the Annex 2 of the annotated agenda, which I'll also project in a moment, because that's the schedule of work for COP-4.1. In other words, here we show on which day, which agenda item is opened and what will be discussed. I'd also like to draw your attention to the fact that given that we have to meet in these extraordinary circumstances and online for the first meeting, that the COP will only be looking at a limited and time prioritized items. That is namely, firstly, item 6, the program of work and budget, and then item 7, of course, to decide on the resumed meeting, and then, as mentioned, an aspect of the agenda item of Global Environment Fund, namely the 8th replenishment, an aspect of the national reporting, namely the reporting guidance, and an aspect of effectiveness evaluation. May I also draw your attention just to the little box in the left-hand side here. Some documents, namely the annotated agenda, the issues and information document, and perhaps even the list of documents, we've placed a small asterisk, because should there be information that the second segment requires that has not been made provision for here, we will perhaps need to amend those two documents or revise them or have additional information to you. But as it stands now, both the annotated agenda as well as the issues and information document are to cover the entire COP from the first segment all the way to the second segment. Moving to the next slide. This is quite small, I do apologize, but would just like to draw your attention that you can see this, of course, also in document 4/1, addendum 1 in the annotated agenda. It's the very last page of that document, and it is the tentative schedule as set forth based on the agreement of the Bureau in terms of the items that will be discussed and considered at the online segment, the so-called 4.1. And just to narrate it through, there will be a plenary on Monday, the 1st of November, where besides the opening and organizational matters agenda item, the focus will actually be on the program of work and budget. After a short break, there will be the consideration of the date of the resumed meeting, and thereafter, the matter of effectiveness evaluation will be opened. There is no plenary on Tuesday or Thursday, but on Wednesday, the plenary meets again and will consider national reporting and also the matter of the 8th replenishment of the Global Environment Facility. And then again, the plenary will meet on Friday to consider the outcome of the considerations on budget and program of work, as well as the date of the resumed meeting. And for these two, it is foreseen that a draft decision will have been completed by that stage for the COP to adopt on the Friday. And thereafter, there would be the adoption of the meeting report of the online segment, as well as not the closure, but the adjournment of the meeting until the 4th meeting can meet again and resume its work. May I just point out that on the Tuesday and Wednesday afternoon and Thursday, there will be space provided for the contact group on program of work and budget, which we'll go to in a moment. With this as overview, and the next slide, I would like to just draw your attention to the place on our website where you can see the documents. They are arranged on the one hand into working documents, as you can see here by the arrow, or into information documents. So just scroll through to get to the document you are interested in viewing. Let me also highlight the small bubble where it says COP-4.1. Here we softly indicate which document will be opened during 4.1. All the documents are prepared for the COP, including those that will only be open in the second segment. So they're all there for your preparation and early perusal already. But to ease your way through what is quite a sizable amount of documents for COP4, we've put the small notifier so that you can see those documents that you would need to look at perhaps first for preparation in November. And just to say, of course, that all of these documents have been up since yesterday. They are still here and there an information document that is in the process of being uploaded. But just to say that the budget-related documents have also been available since the 2nd of August. And with that, we go to the next. And here I hand over to my colleague Sandra Rucker to take us through the budget-related documents for Agenda Item 6, Program of Work and Budget. Over to you, Sandra.
Yeah, thank you very much, Claudia. Good morning to everybody. So I'll make it very brief, the presentation on the Program of Work and Budget, because we'll have a dedicated session on Monday, the 18th of October, just on budget, on the Program of Work and Budget. So as Claudia just said, all the budget-related documents were posted 90 days before COP4. And for the main documents that we have is, as always, the main document, the document 24 on the Program of Work and Budget with the 2 funding scenarios. So first, the zero nominal growth, and then we have a 5% scenario. And then, as always, it has the scale of SS contributions, the draft decision. So the usual documents, that's really the main document. Then we have 2 information documents. One is the Inf 21, that's the information on financial matters, where, as in the past as well, we put the status of budget implementation. So this year for the past biennium, also for the current biennium, status of contributions and a lot of other information. And the last document, the Inf 22 document, so that complements the Program of Work and Budget document, the budget activity fact sheets, giving a lot of details on each budget activity. So next slide, please. Then on the Program of Work and Budget, the process, Claudia mentioned it a little bit already. So there's a plenary on Monday, which will present the documents for the budget. And then on Friday, after the contact group has met and contemplated, we expect a decision on the budget, at least for the 2022 budget and elements of 2023. And I also wanted to mention, as I mentioned, we have an information session on the budget on 18th of October. And currently what we have is the online budget forum, where you all have received invitations and guidelines on how to join this forum. And so any comments, any questions you have until mid-October, you can post them. We will answer them. We've also uploaded the documents there. So so the goal is basically that we answer as many of your questions before we actually go into COP4, since we have less time during COP4, so that a lot of questions are already clarified by the time we go into COP. And then obviously, as always, we expect a contact group for the Program of Work and Budget. As for all contact groups, it's for parties only, no observers, also in English, because all the documents we've uploaded are in all the 6 languages, the main documents. The 2 INF documents I mentioned are in English, and the contact group is only in English and there's no interpretation. But in the contact group, there will be no limitation on the number of parties that can take the floor. And one of the roles of the contact group is also to the budgetary clearance of any other decisions taken at the virtual segment of COP4. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell the main things. And like I said, we will have the briefing session on 18th of October. So I'll hand back to Claudia with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we go to the next agenda item here. As mentioned, we will go into 3 agenda items under agenda item 4. And may I ask Marianne to take us through the first one, namely the Global Environment Facility. Over to you, Marianne.
Thank you, Claudia, and thanks to all our participants for spending your time here with us today on these documents. As most of you will know, the Global Environment Facility is one of the 2 parts of the Convention's financial mechanism, the other part being the specific international program for direct capacity building and technical assistance support to eligible parties. So with the replenishment of the Global Environment Facility Trust Fund in process now, those discussions are in process now. The Bureau considered it quite important and timely to discuss the 8th replenishment of the Global Environment Facility Trust Fund at our 4.1 session. So next slide, please. So the replenishment provides the funding for the Global Environment Facility part of our financial mechanism. And therefore, the replenishment is a really critical thing for our parties to know about and be quite familiar with and to interact with in appropriate ways. So we have document 4/10, which provides information pertaining to the replenishment, which the 8th period of the replenishment will begin next summer in July 2022 and will continue for 4 years until 2026. And as I said, the negotiations are underway within the GEF Assembly to determine the shape and form of the replenishment. That includes the resource allocations and the programming directions for GEF 8. And then the GEF Council would take up the outcome of the Assembly's deliberations in a decision to open the 8th replenishment. That decision would take place in June 2022 in order for the 8th replenishment period to be opened in July of next year. So the graphic on your screen shows not GEF 8, but it shows GEF 7 to give you a sense of the portfolio distribution by resources that we're currently using. So the GEF 7 current 4-year replenishment period is, of course, ending when GEF 8 begins. And on the right-hand part of the bar, you can see the chemicals and waste segment of GEF 7 by resources, which is just over 15% of the total funding envelope. And so that is where the bulk, the vast majority of the resources for the Minamata Convention GEF implementation projects resides. Next slide, please. So we have prepared 2 documents, as I said, and in document 4/10, we have a number of details about the replenishment, including its timeline. So the replenishment discussions began early this year, and there is a second replenishment meeting coming up right around the corner at the end of this month. And that will discuss the second draft of the strategic positioning and programming directions documents. And so that's an important meeting. that parties may wish to engage in through their national processes related to the JEF. And then another very important meeting coming up in January of next year, the third replenishment meeting, will decide on the final shape and content of the strategic positioning and programming directions document. Now, it's actually two documents. It's been split into two separate documents for this September and January meetings. As you'll see in a moment, those are available in our INF document. So those meetings will continue through next spring. And the timing of that is what really led our Bureau to believe that it's very important to bring this topic up at COP-4.1. So as I said, you can see all the dates that will lead to the final decision to begin JEF 8. Next slide, please. So the information document is the current draft of the JEF 8 programming directions and the strategic positioning framework documents. And as I said, the third replenishment meeting scheduled for January of next year will finalize these documents. So that will really guide the programming of resources to in JEF 8, as they will fund, those resources will fund individual projects and programs, including those undertaken by the JEF in its role as part of our financial mechanism. So these documents are relevant to our parties as they coordinate at the national level and also national and regional processes to prepare for the replenishment meetings. The link on the bottom of your screen is not to our website, it's actually to a JEF website where the full set of documents for the second replenishment meeting are posted. But in our information document, it's a very large document, so we have sort of delineated which are the most important pieces that are relevant to the Minamata Convention that our parties may wish to focus on. And the next document is what we expect to happen at COP-4.1. What is the suggested action is parties may wish to take note of the information regarding the timeline, the funding priorities, and the draft programming directions. And parties may wish to make use of this information in the context of their national processes relative to the replenishment. And parties are invited to make statements on the replenishment. So those statements, they would be captured in the meeting report, and they can help inform the replenishment planning discussions that, as I said, are running throughout this winter, spring, and finalized next summer. So with that, I believe that's all the information you need to be able to make use of these documents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne. You've taken us through some very important documents for all our parties to be aware of. It is a process that happens next to us, not directly inside the convention process, but it's pivotal to the funding of so much work that supports the work of the convention. May I take you now through the next or another agenda item, which is agenda item 4H, national reporting. And here, as mentioned, while there are more than one aspect for the COP4 to consider under national reporting, for COP-4.1, it is only to draw your attention to the draft guidance for completing the national reporting format for the Minamata Convention. Underneath the link to the document, you will see links to 2 decisions on national reporting that the COP has taken so far. The first decision was taken at COP1, where the timing and format of the national reporting was decided by the COP. The format consists of 5 parts, parts A to E, and part B of those parts consists of 43 questions. So this is the entire reporting format that parties are to report on. Further, I would like to just point out, as you know, that many parties have already forwarded their short reports at the end of 2019, but now at the end of this year, 21, the first full reports, that is, all 43 questions are due. And in light of that, at COP3, the COP decided to request the Secretariat in Decision 313 to draft guidance for completing the national reporting format. And may I just say that this guidance has been already forwarded and distributed some months ago for comment, and these comments have been incorporated as much as possible. And so the draft guidance that you see in document 417 already on the website is inclusive of many of the valuable comments that parties have already made. The part of why is this coming forward at 4.1 is very important to highlight, namely that Decision 313 requested parties to, encouraged parties to use the draft guidance on a provisional basis in their preparation of the full national reports that are due at the end of this year. In other words, to use the annex of that document to give information on how to answer the 43 questions and all the different parts in the reporting format. So just to say that there is more information in the draft guidance, including a suggested action for possible adoption of the guidance, but this is not for consideration at 4.1, that will be at the consideration of 4.2. For 4.1, we merely wish to bring this work to the attention of the parties and to support parties in their process of completing their national reports. Next slide, please. Many of you have joined us for the dedicated sessions, but just to draw your attention to this, as part of Minamata Online Season 2, we have made 4 dedicated sessions to parties to help them prepare their full national reports. The first session was on the 7th of September, where we looked at the overall approach on how to prepare the reports and also lessons learned from the short reports. Thereafter, on the 14th and 16th of September, we went into each of these 43 questions to give you more information and clarity on how to compile the information and what information is requested. And we also are available on the 22nd of November. That is 40 days until the deadline. We have made 2 slots available on that day, again, to try to be of service to as many parties and as many time zones as possible to help with the last ditch efforts to complete the reports by the 31st of December this year. If you've missed any of the previous sessions, they are all available both as recordings and also, of course, the PowerPoint presentations. Next slide. Just to highlight that online reporting is to be done in the online reporting tool. Here you see a small snapshot of what it looks like. It mirrors the format and guides you through each of the questions, and it also has links to the articles and or guidance that's relevant for you to be able to be supported as you go step by step through all of the different articles. All national focal points have received the login credentials on the 7th of September to begin national reporting. If your country has not received its information, it might be because the national focal point information on our database is dated, or perhaps the person has had a promotion or gone on to another area of work. If you do not, as a party, have your information of how to access the online reporting tool, please get in touch with us as soon as possible so that we could find out whether the information is correct in terms of the national focal point notified to the convention, or if it needs to be updated or somehow amended. This is very, very important, as only the national focal points will be given the access credentials, as of course this is an important national report that would have to go through official channels to be submitted to the convention secretariat. So the 31st of December is our target date, and may I just also transmit some good news, which is that for the short reports, which were due by December 2019, we have a very marvelous reporting rate of 89%. And so, of course, we hope that we will have, again, a very good reporting rate, notwithstanding that the questions are many, many more to answer for the end of this year. And just to say, if you need any support in any way, whether it's technical or even substantive, please reach out to the Secretariat so that we could help you. But certainly start with document 417 as it takes you step by step through the entire process. Next slide, please. I now turn to effectiveness evaluation. This is another item that is going to be opened in some way at COP-4.1, and you see a number of documents have been prepared by the Secretariat in this regard, and I shall walk you through these documents, but also the overall approach on effectiveness evaluation for COP-4.1 versus 4.2. May I just recall for those that might not be working on effectiveness evaluation on a daily basis that it's part of Article 22, that this article in its paragraph 1 states and stipulates that the Conference of the Parties is to evaluate the effectiveness of the Convention beginning no later than 6 years after the entry into force of the Convention and thereafter on a periodic basis at an interval decided by the Conference. There are a number of decisions already and much work has already been done on effectiveness evaluation. It has been an agenda item at each of the COPs so far. At COP3, decision 310 was passed, which is a decision called on the arrangements for the first effectiveness evaluation of the convention, and the link is provided here. In that decision, the conference agreed on 3 areas of work to be carried out following the 3rd meeting and in preparation of the 4th meeting, namely on indicators, on guidance on monitoring, as well as on certain reports that were provided for in the effectiveness evaluation framework. And so please have a look at document 418 to give you the overall context of all of the work, but I shall go into it in a moment more. But may I also draw your attention to the addendum to that document, addendum 1, which is the work on indicators, and further inf 11, which shows all of the views that have been submitted by parties on indicators. Thereafter, may I also draw your attention to Addenda 2, which is guidance on monitoring of mercury and mercury compounds to support the effectiveness evaluation of the Minamata Convention. Its executive summary is contained in Addenda 2, and Inf 12 will include the guidance as such, as drafted. And may I also draw to your attention that the 2 reports that the COP wanted to see work advanced on are, on the one hand, Article 21 synthesis report, and on the other hand, the trade, supply and demand report, and information on the drafting of those 2 reports is contained in document 418. Moving to the next slide. I'd like to draw your attention to the document 418 specifically, as that gives you the overall frame of the work, but also I'd like to draw your attention not only to the fact that the document gives an introduction and then sets out what I've just explained in terms of the work that was conducted on indicators and draft monitoring guidance, but it also has a section with a very long title, but a very short section called Overview of Work Done Since the First Meeting and Remaining Areas of Work Needed for the Conference of Parties to put in place the framework and arrangements for evaluating the effectiveness of the Convention and to conduct its first evaluation. This section includes a table starting at page 5. I've only projected here a small part of the table for you to see. On the left-hand side are all the elements that at some point the COP had identified as necessary for itself to put in place the arrangements for evaluating the effectiveness of the convention. And then moving along to the right-hand side is, in the different columns, is to give you a status of work, to give you an understanding of what work has already been completed, and the progress of that work. And the final column gives you an idea of what still needs to be done to complete all of the matters to put in place the arrangements for such an evaluation. I'd also like to draw your attention to one paragraph under that heading that we have here as a note, which is to say that following the third meeting of the Conference of the Parties, some parties initiated informal consultations on some items that remained unresolved at the third meeting and that were not part of the work provided for or requested through the decision 310. In other words, everything you see projected as documents on the left-hand side of these slides are the documents that the Secretariat has prepared based on the work of the parties in the intersessional time and as mandated by the decision 310. However, as there were some matters that were not necessarily reflected in that decision, parties have spoken amongst themselves and worked amongst themselves on some aspects of that. And so we'd just like to draw your attention to this. Next slide. Just to say that in document 418 is also a Secretariat drafted suggested action that outlines and it draws from the table that I just spoke about. It draws from the table to say all the matters that still are either somewhat open or still open for the COP to complete its deliberations on, which include the beginning of the first evaluation and also when to conclude the first evaluation. It includes concluding on setting up or an effectiveness evaluation committee, concluding on the indicators, concluding on the draft guidance, etc., and at some point also concluding on the periodicity or the approach on the periodicity. This is just a type of summary of all of the items that are still before the COP at some point to make its decisions and conclusions on. And next slide. In conclusion, just the approach that is suggested for COP 4.1 versus 4.2 on this very complex and long-standing agenda item. At COP 4.1, these documents will be opened on the effectiveness evaluation, the documents I've just identified on the left-hand side of the screen. During plenary on Monday, these documents will be prepared. But furthermore, as there has been this party-led consultation, this informal work as well, this could be the opportunity, or it provides the conference the opportunity to also be informed of these consultations and or any other information that is coming forward that the COP may need for its deliberations on effectiveness evaluation. And then at COP 4.2, it is to consider the documents and any other information that the conference foresees on effectiveness evaluation that it needs, and to consider it more in depth in the in-person segment, in the second segment of the COP deliberation. So in other words, COP 4.1 opens the agenda and also collects any other information that would be coming forward, and COP 4.2 would be going into the deeper consideration of it, including suggested actions and so on. And with that, I have concluded on presenting on effectiveness evaluation. So the next slide takes us to the dates of the resumed meeting and the document related to that. And may I hand over to my colleague Lara Otnibene in this regard. Lara, over to you.
Thank you, Claudia. I will introduce the last document we will present to you today, which will be open under item 7 of the agenda, dates of the resumed fourth meeting of the Conference of the Parties. The document is document 4/25, titled Dates of the Resumed Fourth Meeting of the Conference of the Parties. As mentioned earlier by Claudia, the Bureau of COP4 decided in April this year that as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in particular of the related restrictions on travel and gathering, the COP will be held in 2 segments, an online segment scheduled for the 1st to the 5th November of this year, and an in-person segment to be held during the first quarter of 2022 in Bali, Indonesia. The dates of the in-person segment are subject to confirmation by a decision of the COP at its online segment in November this year. The government of Indonesia, who's the host of COP4, has informed the Secretariat of its preparations to host the resume meeting in Bali from 21st to 25th March 2022. Therefore, I would like to draw your attention to the last paragraph of the draft decision that is contained in this document, where the COP is invited to decide to adjourn the fourth meeting of the COP and to resume the meeting in an in-person format in Bali, Indonesia, and the dates are to be decided. Thank you very much. This is it from my side. I turn back to Claudia and I'm available in case you have any questions.
So we've raced you through not only the preparations of COP4, but also specifically through the documents before COP 4.1. If you have any particular questions on any of the documents or any other related matters, please feel free to note them in the chat and we shall be happy to try to give you an explanation. I don't see any currently, but please feel free to ask for any specific information. One point of information, and maybe Charlie, if you go to the next slide, please, is that this is the projection of all of the events we have arranged for Minamata Online, and you will see also that there are regional meetings coming up over the next couple of weeks. And so starting with Asia in late September, and thereafter Gulag, Africa and Eastern European states. These meetings will be looking at these documents in much more detail. The Secretariat will present them in even greater detail then, and then of course the regions will have time to consider them amongst themselves in terms of how they would like to be further informed or further supported or deliberate amongst themselves on those items. So we will have another chance to meet all of you in your regions in this regard, of course, as well. Regional meetings are chaired by the regional bureau members and are closed meetings. This is to allow parties all the space they need to deliberate amongst themselves for good preparation of the COP. These online meetings that happen now before COP 4.1, regional meetings will also, of course, happen again before 4.2. And also to say before 4.2, we will be giving another round of more detailed briefings on the many, many more documents that are, of course, before the COP at the resumed meeting. So that is the dates for that will also be communicated, but please be assured that, of course, we will also be ready and to try to support you in that regard. I do see some questions coming in. Let me start with the one from Els, just because I see it first, which is the registering for the budget forum. Sandra, would you like to reply to that? Notifications have been sent, is my understanding, but Sandra, could you speak to that, please? Els is from Belgium.
Yes, sure. So we've sent out the registration. We sent an email to basically all parties to register, and the process is normally the head of delegation and the alternate head of delegation. They get access also to not only view but also write comments. But if you basically for your party you need, because in the budget contact group sometimes you have somebody else dealing with budget. So if you need somebody else to have access in that forum also to write comments, you just contact us and we'll be able to accommodate that. I don't know if that answers your questions or you needed anything further.
Thank you, Sandra. So Els, I would say just check in firstly that the national focal point, because when we say we send it to parties, we always send everything to our national focal point. So I would just suggest that first check-in is just that the national focal point has received it, just that line is open and clear. And if you need any other information, as Sandra says, just get in touch with us and we'll make sure that the other registrations come as well. Then, and just to say, this is also why it is imperative that the national focal point is always really up to date on our database. As we said, or as I said, there could be promotions or there could be other reasons why national focal point is being replaced. Please have a look at our website in terms of the national focal point we have on record. If this is not the correct national focal point, there is a small process to nominate the focal point or to update the information. So please just see the website in terms of the small form that needs to be filled in, and there's detail in terms of how to do that. Then let me also come to a question which may be on many people's minds, and that is exactly the nature of the resumed meeting. What the Bureau has decided is that we will have these two segments, and it is anticipated that the second segment, we are hosted, of course, by Indonesia. This is our presidency, and so our presidency has been working very hard to find a way to enable the second segment to indeed convene in person. But the Bureau was also very cognizant of the fact that the situation is very difficult to predict. And so the Bureau will be informed of further information coming up before COP4.1 to be able to be best informed on the next steps forward and how to decide on the resumed segment. The actual decision of when the second segment will happen, when the meeting resumes, in other words, will be done at COP-4.1. So that is the time the time that the COP will have to decide on how to do the second segment, when to do the second segment, or any other aspect that the COP would need to decide to be able to conclude its matters it needs for COP for this year and next year. Do I see any other questions, or are there any other aspects that you might want us to elaborate on a bit? We do have a bit more time ahead of us here. I see one question. Let me just get to it. Thank you very much. This comes from Japan. Okay, let me start with the first one. I think I was trying to already bring some information forward in terms of that. You can read the question in the chat, but let me read the first one. If we ought to change the dates after the decision due to the COVID situation, what can be the procedure for rescheduling the dates? Virtual decision, virtual COP2 to take the decision on the resumed COP 4.3. True. We haven't exactly spoken at all or considered at all about a 4.3. We are working currently on the assumption that there will be two segments, because that is what the Bureau has decided so far. What the COP will decide in November, I cannot predict. We cannot predict entirely, but it is expected that in November a decision can be taken on whether or not or how we can meet in the first quarter of 2022. And I would imagine, because the Bureau has asked for contingency planning, and I would just like to reiterate that the host country is particularly engaged to be mindful of all of the different unknowns and uncertainties, but also specifically the health and well-being of delegates, as well as the importance of the meeting. And to balance all of this, we will have to rely on the decision being able to be taken at COP 4.1 on how the next segment will be convened. Just to say further that currently, as a secretariat, we cannot give you any more information on this. What we can share is that the Bureau is set to meet this Thursday, and this is one of the items, but it will not be making necessarily a decision this Thursday yet. But the Bureau is keeping the situation under constant review with the President to best inform how to go forward should any kind of change needing to be made. Your second question, can we take decisions to promote intersessional work between 4.1 and 4.2? This is a question which has actually come forward informally in a number of settings as well. And it is an extraordinary situation that we have a COP in two segments, not just divided by a weekend, but indeed by some months. And there has also been an expression by a number of parties that the time should be used best in between to also advance more the work that has been ongoing. And so this is a question that's coming forward from a number of parties. I would like to say at this stage that it is indeed in the hands of parties to decide what they would like to direct going forward between COP 4.1 and COP 4.2. Currently, it is agreed that only the agenda items that we have presented today will be opened. And currently it is agreed broadly that there would be a decision on budget and program of work, and also a decision on the second segment. If there needs to be any other direction that needs to be communicated by the COP, or that the COP needs for its fulfillment of its work, it is in the hands of the COP to decide that it needs that, and would have to be brought forward then. But may I just say that it is very difficult to foresee exactly how an online segment can be exactly the same as an in-person way of collaborating and reaching decisions. And so we are mindful that it's very important that all parties feel that they are part of the online segment, are able to prepare well, and are able to be heard well in terms of their perspectives and their interests. And so it is our sincere hope that the deliberations at the online segment can be as constructive and as supportive as possible, so that all parties feel that they are part of moving the work forward. I just make this point because it is of course known that it is sometimes difficult to completely deliberate online, although we are really trying with preparations such as these and many other outreach to all our parties to try to help prepare them as much as possible, you as much as possible, and also to allow time amongst yourselves to listen to each other's perspectives and be prepared in this way. And then I don't see any other, oh, maybe there's another one. Let me just go to it. On the regional meetings. The regional meetings are under the chairmanship of the Bureau members of that region, and it is for the Bureau members of that region, or the chairs, co-chairs of that region, to decide on observers in that meeting. And so it may be that they are, and this is in fact, this is actually the way to arrange this. It is not a completely fully open setting, even when we worked in a more in-person arrangement. And so it is not supposed to exclude anybody, and should there be a need to include observers, it is at the discretion of the co-chairs to do so if it is helpful to them. But it is supposed to be a place for parties to be able to deliberate amongst themselves, and it is entirely at the discretion of the co-chairs which sections might be open to others as observers and which sections are really closed for them to decide matters amongst themselves. You will recall that regional meetings are not only about, let's say, documents, but they may also be about deliberations of officers and other such matters that are really the purview of the parties to decide amongst themselves. So I can only comment right now, Elena, about the regional meetings coming up, that they are under the chairmanship of those bureau members. I cannot yet speak very much about the regional meetings before 4.2. Originally, it had been our anticipation that there would be online regional meetings, and also that just back to back with COP2 convening in person on the front end of it would be a more generous time for regional meetings to take place as well. But as we are currently not yet in a position to speak definitively of COP 4.2, I can't yet definitely tell you much about the regional meetings preceding COP 4.2. Let me just see that I'm... that I have captured. And may I maybe ask Lara if there's anything that I have forgotten or that needs to be added to regional meetings, please?
Thank you, Claudia. No, I think you've covered it. The participation of observers to the regional meeting that will take place at the end of this month and in October is now closed to observers. We have received requests for participation for the upcoming Asia Pacific regional meeting, where observer will participate after agreement with the co-chairs, so it is a possibility. These regional meetings being mainly focused or only focused on matters to be discussed during the online segment, so namely the budget and program of work, which is typically not an issue where observers are invited to participate to. The requests received were limited, but they're not closed. And that's why in these specific online regional meetings, we have taken this approach. That doesn't mean in any way that such a participation will not be allowed on a broader scale for the next cycle of regional meetings. As you have mentioned in your question, the co-chairs made ask for observers to leave the virtual room while to allow parties to have closed door deliberations during the regional meetings, but then observers may be allowed back into the room when the co-chairs allow it. So we'll follow a similar procedure to the one that we used for the in-person regional meetings in the past. Thank you.
If there are, thank you very much, Lara. If there are any other questions that you might have either now, we still have a moment or so here, or if something comes to mind afterwards, please simply reach out to us to let us know, and we shall try to support you in that question. Otherwise, I could maybe just draw your attention to the broader presentations in the Minamata Online calendar. You will see that we have made in red all of the events that are specific to COP, so COP briefings, regional meetings. There was, for example, on the 1st of September, also a briefing on the amendment proposals that have come forward to Annex A and B of the convention. So if you've missed that, I'd like to draw your attention to that, as each of the proponents presented their proposals there. And you can also, of course, get in touch with them directly if you would like. Having said that, Annex A and B amendment discussions would only be in the second segment of the COP. May I also draw your attention that all of the ones in silver are the events that are for the implementation, review and support stream, and this is where you will find the different events on national reporting and other such information. And then may I draw your attention to the events that you see in gold, because these are the ones on science, and science matters. And in fact, there is one Minamata Online event taking place later on today. It is on ASGM and brings together practitioners and others to tell you about the latest state of play in terms of reducing and removing the need for mercury in artisanal and small-scale gold mining. This is, of course, an extremely important aspect of the work of the convention. It accounts for a very significant amount of mercury being released to the environment. And so this is a very important area of our work. And should you have time and interest to join it, I warmly encourage you to do so, as you'll hear perspectives from different parts of the world and also from the partnership and also from others that are working on this topic. With this, I've taken us to 11 o'clock. And I would like to thank you for your attention to join us today for this hour. This recording of this event and also the presentations will all be uploaded later today. Please check in again with the documents and do let us know if there's any other information you would need or you'd like that would support you in your preparation towards the COP. With that, thank you very much. Also on behalf of all of my colleagues that joined today, as well as all of those you don't see, but that are working in the background. And until next time, please keep well. Bye-bye.